Welcome to another edition of the Insider Mailbag. I'm Jerry Johnson, and we have actually tons of really good questions from inside the Red Raiders subscribers. That's because last week I couldn't get it together and actually get the video done. It was a crazy week. This week we're combining several questions. I'm not going to be able to get to all of them, but I've picked several of them out. And without further ado, let's dive right into them. First one comes from Red Swarm 35247S, who says he feels like Tech is going down the same road the Red Raiders went down a couple of years ago, building the defensive line with high school recruits. He says, look, I know Tech is landing some really impressive recruits and some projects, but any chance that Tech brings in defensive line transfer portal players? Man, that was a long question. It was a good question, though. Yes, I do believe. Now, I don't know the numbers. People have asked me who the targets are. And, of course, there aren't a lot of targets right now this time of year. After the regular season ends, or when the transfer portal window is, Tech will definitely be a player. In terms of numbers, we'll have to see how many guys actually leave, that kind of thing. Of course, Tech is getting, like you said, some very impressive guys. A couple like Guyton, the 5-star edge from Georgia, who reclassified to 2026. Obviously, some impressive 5-star and 4-star. Jalen Brewster, of course, one of the top recruits in the country for 2027. But to answer your question, like I said, yeah, they're still going to be players in the portal. He also added, he says Tech does better with transfers. I think a lot of schools do better with transfers, especially if you have a culture like Joey McGuire's established, a lot of things in place, and you have a GM like James Blanchard who knows what the team is looking for, knows what would fit the culture, and exactly is working hand in hand with McGuire and some of the other coaches in terms of not just getting the right fit in terms of culture, but on the field. And then just the fact that, the level of transfers that Texas Tech is landing now. And then they're older. They're older. They've already been developed. So it makes sense that a 21-year-old who, has been at the training table, has received instruction from college coaches in the weight room, all those things, and just has that experience, would do better, especially in the first year. But some of those recruits, like Guyton and Brewster, Redmond, 4-star defensive tackle from DeSoto, and that's in the 2027 class, him and Brewster. But still, the guys that they're getting, they're of a much higher caliber than what Tech has gotten historically. So it'll be interesting to see how those guys pan out as well. All right, next question. Pointman1 says, anything more you can report about the health of the men's basketball team? He says, if he understands things correctly, it's not great now, but expected to be okay by the season start. Yeah, there was a couple of guys I heard, especially some big men who had some injuries. Coach McCastle has said, though, that he does expect all the guys to be healthy by the start of the season. So, obviously I don't want them to be injured just from a humanity standpoint. I don't want anybody to be injured. But except for the Eagles, Philadelphia Eagles, of course, as a Cowboys, lifelong wounded the tomb Cowboys fan. Just kidding, kind of. No, I do expect, I believe McCastle was being genuine, the team to be relatively healthy. I can't control what happens from now, which is creeping up. The season's creeping up just here in less than 2 weeks. But I do expect them to be full go. And then, that Illinois game, I think, is one of the first big ones against another preseason top 25 opponent. So that'll be interesting to watch. And, of course, this team will probably take some time to come together. Obviously, you got JT and Christian Anderson coming back. You like some of the pieces like a Lawan Watts. I can go down the list, but it's going to take take a while for all these guys to figure it out. But they've been working together throughout the offseason, most of them, and it should be. I can't wait for Tech basketball season to tip off, to be quite honest, man. I love basketball. Red Raider Hoops is amazing with McCaslin, guys like Buff, the GM, Kellen Kellen Buffington, excuse me, uh, have built is really good, is exciting, and of course last year off that Elite Eight appearance and bringing back the Big 12 Player of the Year and JT and a guy who's a preseason All-American. There's a lot of excitement around Texas Tech basketball, and there should be. And based on what I know right now, I expect them to be healthy when they tip off the season. LB Manson, he asked this question before the loss to Arizona State, to be fair. But he said, is it too early to start talking about national championship? Yeah, I mean, it's a lot easier to say that now or feel better about saying, yeah, it may be too early. If I had actually posted this last week, it probably would have been a different answer, to be quite honest. But that was a major setback. We all know that. I know you know that, LB Mans, just with your post history and talking with you about football and stuff. Realistically, they probably need to win out, but I think, and we're going to go over some possible scenarios here later in the mailbag, but it's a little early. Let's see if Tech can get to Jerry World, get to Arlington, that Big 12 championship, and win it. And then, hey, especially if the team remains relatively healthy. You've already, lost Barron for some time, Skylar Gill-Howard for the regular season, though it is a possibility he could return for the postseason, maybe even like a Big 12 championship or something like that. I don't know. That's just what I've been told. We'll have to see about that. But still, if they can remain relatively healthy, then yeah, I think Tech has a chance of getting to Arlington. And if you win that, then yeah. I mean, if you're in the playoffs, then you definitely have a chance of winning a national championship. Now, obviously, the competition will be tougher against other playoff teams, but it'll still be very exciting, and it gives yourself an opportunity. I think hope is a good thing, maybe the only thing, but I think it's realistic. And if Tech wins the Big 12 championship, it's mission accomplished, and just you can play loose and see what you can do, see what noise you can make. So, but there's some tough games just to get to Jerry World, so stay tuned for that. Let's see here. Raider Power 81 wants to know if I have any announcement or if I've heard any announcement from Coach McGuire about who they plan on redshirting. Basically, almost every freshman. I think Tristan Gentry, I don't know how many games he's played in as a punt returner, but practically every true freshman for sure. And then some of the younger guys. They're maybe looking for medical red shirts for some of the offensive linemen who haven't really come back from injuries. Trying to think about who else. But those are the main ones who I expect to redshirt. And that's a sign of a good roster. When all your freshmen come in and basically you're going to redshirt all of them, that is a really good sign. SM8588 says, if Tech loses to BYU and Cincinnati, and BYU plays in the Big 12 championship, do I believe Tech gets into the national championship tournament? Yeah, I think, Cincinnati and Tech don't play each other. They're not on each other's schedule. So I guess they would play in the Big 12 championship. So I don't really let's look at this scenario in another way. Since Tech lost to Arizona State, if they lose to BYU, it's Cincinnati. Okay, if I get it now, Tech loses to BYU, and then Cincinnati and BYU play in the Big 12 championship. Yeah. So if Tech, let's say, finishes 10-2, doesn't go to the Big 12 championship, do I think they'll be in the playoffs? I think that's highly unlikely, to be honest. I mean, obviously, if they're in the SEC, it'd be like a top 5 or 6 seed or something like that. But in the Big 12, the way the voters, the way the media talks about the Big 12, I find it very difficult to imagine that scenario. Now, if Tech goes 10-2, gets in the Big 12 championship, and wins the Big 12 championship, of course, they would almost certainly be in. And then what if they get in the Big 12 championship and lose? I think that's the question. That would be interesting, whether they'd be 11-2 or 10-3. I don't know if I see that. But 11-2, I think there's a way, depending on what happens with the rest of the country, of course, that Texas Tech and how they lose in the Big 12 championship. I think there's an opportunity for the Red Raiders to get in. Elder Texans 79 says, after the fact, it looks really obvious that teams that want to win should focus recruiting on the big guys up front, both defense and offense. Is there some reason that Tech did not start the focus until this last year? At least that is what it looks like. And how quickly do you expect other Big 12 teams to start working harder to get better players up front? Okay. I'm sorry for laughing. But every team has always wanted to get the best recruits on both sides of the line of scrimmage up front. Now, actually landing those guys is a completely different story. Cliff Kingsbury wanted to land a bunch of offense and defense alignments. I know because he told me himself. He wanted those linemen. The freaks, the Jalen Brewsters, the Guyton, the Redmond, those guys that Tech have committed that normally wouldn't even give, like maybe Tech would end up in a top 5 list or something like, or top 10 list, maybe come out for an official visit, but it never felt real. Now it's real. They're landing those guys, and the only difference is that they're landing them instead of targeting them, spending a lot of money, a lot of time, and a lot of effort in trying to land those guys and striking out. So I would think at least 99.9% of all the coaches in the country realize that that's where your team should be built, is in the trenches. Then you got quarterback, and you can build off that, but that's where it's at. It's still about moving people against their will, so that you can move the ball down the field. I mean, that's what the goal is really, is to physically move somebody against their will into a different space. It's violent, it's physical, it's aggressive, and you need big, freakish athletes, big, strong, freakish, mean athletes, especially on the defensive line, but offensive line too, in order to do that and win football games. So that's been known for generations before I was born, and I hope it remains the same moving forward, because if it's not, then that means this game is completely changed, and they should call it something else, like wussy ball or something like that. Mass Tech says, who is the Cam Dickey of this recruiting class? Who are the players that you think were overlooked and will surprise some people from the 2026 recruiting class? I think Cord Nolan is one of them, the linebacker from Oklahoma. So I interviewed him a couple of times in these visits he's made. And again, I think I've told this story, or not story, but I've explained this on the board, that I watched some of his highlights before, like when he was being recruited, when he committed, but I really sat down and watched a bunch of his highlights, basically all the film I could get before I interviewed him. And this is after, I can't remember, maybe Oklahoma State. I can't remember exactly which game it was this year. But he is one of the most violent players at his size of any recruit, 5-star, 2-star, no star, whatever, that I've seen in the last 10 years or whatever. He's like 6'1", 205, fast. He looks like those linebackers, the J-Rod, Ben Roberts, John Curry's, in terms of playing style, in kind of build. Like they'll add some weight on him for sure when he gets here. But he is so violent at the point of attack. He's one of those players, an extreme example of this. I'm not comparing him to him necessarily, but extreme example of this would be Dwayne Slay, in terms of every time I see this Nolan dude from Oklahoma, this linebacker who could play star. He could be a good, like what John Curry's doing right now, star. But every time I see him make a tackle, I think somebody's going to get hurt. Him, the ball carrier, the ref by him, the offensive lineman trying to block, his teammates. It's just a violent collision. Watch his huddle highlights. Very physical player, who I like a lot. I love violent defenders, especially linebackers and safeties. And that's what I think Tech is getting him. To me, it's like, anything could happen. You never know. But to me, a lot like Cam Dickey was in that, I'm pretty sure. And Jacoby Williams is another one. I was like, I'm pretty sure this guy's going to be a player. If not year 1, year 2, then by year 3 when he did get a shot. And that's what I feel about Nolan as well. RCMMHH95 says, why does the time between games keep getting longer and longer? That's a good question. He asked this, I believe, before the Arizona State game. So things might have sped up a little bit this week, especially after the loss. I mean, that was a gut punch. And then also the fact that Tech's playing Oklahoma State, who is 1-6 and 0-4 in the Big 12, 1-6 overall. So that being said, Tech owes Oklahoma State some whippings. So, I know a lot of Tech fans are hoping that happens. I saw a guy, and I was at Cast Iron Grill with my girlfriend for breakfast Friday morning, and saw a dude in full Oklahoma State gear, and I was like giving him hell, and but it was cordial, it was nice, and he was like, hey, I mean, I'm sure y'all are gonna have at us this year, and I was like, well, Tech has been down on its luck for years, and y'all had at Tech for a while, so maybe it's that time. So there will be at least one or a couple of Oklahoma State fans here in Lubbock, but it's still a sellout. It's still a Big 12 opponent, and I can't wait for the game, to be honest. All right, now we're going into this week's questions more, some ones that I picked. This is from Tall Cool. It's about that flag that was picked up on that long pass for Arizona State. He says, how can the referees throw a flag for a pre-snap penalty on the offense, not blow the whistle, let the play happen, then say, never mind, no penalty? Does the league ever punish these incompetent idiots? Supposedly they do. They have they keep tally of the complaints and stuff like that. There was a guy who was suspended from the SEC for, I think, an Auburn-Georgia game earlier in the year. So there is a precedent, at least in the country. I think I think referees in general should be held accountable more. I don't know why they get such a pass, to be honest. I mean, players get reviewed. If I have a typo in a story, y'all are quick with, which I have no problem with. Of course, I own up to it and appreciate the correction. But y'all point out that, hey, you had AM and it's PM or whatever. You misspelled this or whatever. I don't understand why refs don't have to answer to reporters or somebody publicly, so that fans have a better idea of what's going on. But that flag, I mean, I'm sure you already know. They explained it on the telecast on Fox. But the ref who actually told the guy he was lined up on the line of scrimmage was wrong. The guy lined up off sides. Like you said, the play should have never happened. It should have been blown dead. Not only was it not blown dead, Arizona State gets a big play, and they pick up the flag because the guy was like, or so they say, the guy who threw it was the guy who told him he was okay. So that sounds like a mess to me. Even McGuire, head coach Joey McGuire, mentioned that Monday in his presser. He said the refs have been better this year. I don't know. Big 12 refs have been bad for a long time. That certainly was another example of that. Syntax Red Raider says, do you think this coaching staff has the guts to pull a player that isn't doing his job and put someone else in? Or are they more worried about upsetting a player and then that player becomes a cancer in the locker room? Absolutely, they will bench a player. I think they may not want to lose a player to the portal. That's more of a thing than ever. And some of these guys are making more money than some of the coaches. Not Joey McGuire, but, he doesn't have the biggest salary. I think it came out he was like 10th in the Big 12. $4 million. I have his contract somewhere, but I don't have the details off the top of my head. No, look, they want to win. They have one goal, to win a Big 12 championship. Whoever they think is going to give them the best chance to win a Big 12 championship, they're going to do it. You look at Coy Aiken at punt returner. They were giving Tristan Gentry an opportunity there. He got hurt. Coy steps in, plays well. He has back-to-back 36-yard punt returns in consecutive weeks against Kansas, and then that big one against Arizona State, which set up that score that put Tech ahead in the final 2 minutes. So I asked Coach about that, and basically, yeah, Tristan got Wally pipped. They're going to ride Coy as long as he's the hot hand. Cam Dickey in the Kansas game, he was the hot hand, though. This isn't really like benching somebody, but they stuck with him instead of giving Jacoby more carries. So, I mean, I think that's overblown some. I think we might see some changes in some spots this week. We'll see. I understand the thought process. I think even Mike Joe's mentioned that. But I think some of that might be a little overblown. The dynamics between coaches and players certainly have changed with all the money. It's more of a professional thing. But if you have a strong culture and you have a strong backbone and you just really want to win, then yeah, they will. TTU Braves Rock says, second question, I don't know if I answered the first one, I can't remember. He says, does the $100,000 fine escalation for objects on the field apply equally to all schools in the Big 12, or is it Texas Tech specifically because it would become a second or third offense? Yeah, I believe this is escalation of the fines after already being fined and warned about it and all that. So I do not believe that that's for the whole Big 12 in terms of, since Tech has already been fined and reprimanded and all that for it. Denny says, basketball season starts in a couple weeks. Will we hear anything about the team before the season starts? Yes, obviously we've been very involved with the football program and recruiting. A lot of stuff's been going on. But of course, Monty Joe and I will have previews. We'll have written previews, video previews. They just had Big 12 Media Day. I mean, it's a whole lot of yada yada right now. But of course, they'll have local media day, which I plan on attending if at all possible. So to answer your question, yeah, I mean, we're going to cover Texas Tech basketball throughout. So, and I'm really excited about it. Raider Power 81 says, any update of Tech's chances of landing Kavion Bryant? He said K Bryant, but Kavion Bryant, the quarterback, I think he's a 5-star. No, he's a high 4-star. One of the top quarterbacks in the country, one of the top overall players in Texas for the 2027 class. He says he believes announcing in November 1st. Shout out to my dad. That's his birthday, by the way. He said, so it's getting close. Saw where one of the finalists offered his little brother a scholarship as well. Has Tech done that as well? Maybe, I'm not sure. There are some that slipped through the cracks in terms of offers, but Tom Loy, who is a national recruiting analyst, one of the top guys at 247, he posted a story just last week saying that Tech still leads. Now, a week is a long time in recruiting, but no, I think that Tech has a very, very good chance at landing Kavion Bryant. What a major coup that would be. What a great, just round of recruiting from Texas Tech, but what a great 2027 class it looks like it's rounding up to be. Kavion Bryant would be huge. I've watched some of his highlights throughout this season. I watched one where not only did he truck a guy at the goal line, but the dude bounced off him like he was like a mountain or something, an immovable object. He's a specimen, a very good talent, and that would be huge to land him. You already have Stephen Cannon coming in with the 2026 group. He's high school teammates with Guyton, the 5-star edge. So, LaDamian Guyton. So that's really exciting. All that talent. I mean, at some point it is a numbers game in general. You start bringing in all that talent, eventually, I mean, the numbers game says you're going to hit on a lot of it, and that means you're going to be a dang good football team. So I think, again, probably a lot of bidding is going to be going on between now and then. But as I understand it today, Tech's in a very good spot with Bryant. So, well, that's going to do it. I do want to say, if you're going to go and get gear, or if you're going to order Texas Tech gear online, make sure you go to Red Ritter Outfitter. It's where I got this hat, this Dark Horse robe hat, and this is where I got this Dark Horse sideline polo. And, I haven't really been big into like the robe hats or the sideline polos, but of course, put this on, to represent our gracious sponsor, Red Ritter Outfitter. And man, I got to be honest, I really like this gear. Like, I don't think I'm ever going back. This is the look. And of course, the best place to get that is at Red Ritter Outfitter. So with that, I want to thank you for watching. Thank you for all your great questions. And until next time.